Do I need to repeat any of those words? Wow. Jesus really lays it on the line. And whoever says that, Jesus was just a really, really nice guy who just patted children on the head and walked around with, kind of his head in the clouds and was always happy and everything, have obviously never read these words. I mean, these are hard-hitting words. Did you hear all this? I'll just repeat. I know you don't want to hear it, but I'm going to repeat it anyway. I'm not going to read the whole thing, though. Whoever is angry with his brother or sister commits murder and is liable to judgment. Anyone who has lustful intent will be someone accused of adultery. Whoever divorces his wife except on the grounds of sexual immorality or unfaithfulness is considered an adulterer. Don't take oaths. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Just lay it out for people. You don't have to take an oath that you probably are not even going to keep. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Tell the truth all the time. Hard-hitting words. But it shows the impossibility of God's commands for us to keep. And I know I say this a lot, that it is impossible, because we look at that and we go, there is no way. There is no way that I can keep this perfectly, and yet God demands it. God demands that we keep each and every one of those to the letter. And notice how Jesus points out how the people got it all wrong. They try to change God's law to make it, a little bit easier to do. And so the people thought, hey, I'm obeying God, because look at what our teachers have said to us. Look at what our religious leaders have said to us. It says, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. And so they're thinking actual killing of someone. But Jesus said, it goes deeper than that. It's not just an external thing. It's also an internal thing, being angry and hating your fellow human beings. That's all it takes. So it made it very easy for the people to say, I hate those people and I don't want anything to do with them, but I'm not hurting them. I'm not killing anybody. Well, Jesus says, well, yeah, you are. When you hate others, you are putting them to death within your own heart. And then the whole lust thing, holy moly. I mean, it's all over the place. It's what drives a lot of our entertainment. And it's to make something come within you to appeal to you. But Jesus said, no, it's worse than that. It's not just the externals that are going on. It's what's going on inside your heart. If you look at a woman with lustful intent, you've already done it. You've already committed adultery. You see how the people tried to get around all of the God's commands. And boy, wouldn't it be nice for us too, if we can find ways to soften what God has commanded. Because aren't those commandments that, and people have even said this nowadays, aren't those commandments just unreasonable? Well, I wouldn't say unreasonable. I mean, that is the way that God wanted his world to work, but I wouldn't say unreasonable. I would say impossible, not unreasonable. God gathered a people and wanted them to love God with all of their heart, soul, strength, and mind, and to love all people. That's what a neighbor is. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. In the same way that you love yourself and take care of yourself and serve yourself, do that for others. We look for ways to squirrel out of that, though, don't we? Because we like serving ourselves. And the people of the Bible did too. See, history just keeps going on. It repeats itself. There's nothing new here. people did back then what people do today. It's all about the self and taking care of the self and serving the self. And Jesus is trying to pull them out of that shell because that's what they were supposed to do in the first place. God's people were not to place themselves in kind of a cocoon, okay? They were not to be the caterpillars of the world. They were to be the light of the world, the salt of the earth. They were to go out to the nations and proclaim to them, hey, this is our God. And they would see that just by the way the people conducted themselves. But they chose to conduct themselves in a way that God had not planned. So what do you do then? What does God do? What does God do about this? Because obviously it's a problem that human beings cannot solve. You and I can't solve it. It has to be from God. God has to fix this. And the only way God could fix this is to break us out of the cocoon that we have placed ourselves in. And how does he do it? Very simply, he started over. Isn't that what you do when you wanted something to go just perfectly in your way and it doesn't go your way? What do you do when that happens? You start over. Well, if you have the patience to start over. Most people don't have the patience to start over. You know, we live in a society today where something doesn't work. Well, you just throw it out and replace it. Used to be people would just fix their stuff, but as it turns out today, it gets more expensive to fix something than to just replace it. And that's just an example. It takes a lot of patience to start over. Is God patient? Absolutely. Because he started over. How did he start over? He started over with one man. He started over with Jesus. Jesus became what God intended, all wrapped up in one person. And Jesus obeyed God's law. He kept God's law. He kept the commandments that he himself talked about. He did it perfectly. See, Jesus was not a hypocrite. Whatever Jesus spoke against, he did not do. Whatever Jesus spoke for, he did. And did it perfectly. So Jesus would not see God's commands as unreasonable. And he wouldn't even see them as impossible either. Because Jesus was fully God and fully human, he could fully obey. And he would do that on our behalf. Jesus didn't do it for himself. He did it for others. Jesus did it for the entire world. All the promises that God had ever given were now realized in one person, Jesus Christ. And Jesus is now gathering a new people. And he does that through baptism, where he unites himself with us, and we're united with Jesus in his life and in his death and in his rising from the dead. Because in baptism our sin is put to death, washed away by the water with the word, and we are raised up with Jesus, then that means we're a new creation. That means we get to start over. It's a constant start over with us. And in Jesus Christ, we're always beginning anew. We're new creations and being renewed and renewed and renewed daily and constantly. And then we are sent out into the world. Sent out into the world to love others as Jesus has loved us. To show Jesus to the world, to be expressions of our baptism, of being united with Jesus in his death and his resurrection. We're to be like living Jesuses wherever we go. And we can't do that on our own power. That's why Jesus has a meal. He sets a table for us. You have to go with some sustenance. You must be fed first. And Jesus feeds us. He gives us himself. He is the gift. He is the one God started over with, And in receiving him, we start over as well. And so we come to his table this evening to receive his body and his blood, crucified for us, shed for us on the cross, but then raised to life. It is a token of your true identity, my true identity. It's Jesus. Jesus is our life and our salvation. And it's in Jesus that God's promises, all of God's promises of life and forgiveness and salvation, is realized in Jesus. All of God's promises are yes. Yes to you. And he said yes to me. And he said yes to all others. So, in the world, we conduct ourselves as God has said yes to us in Jesus Christ. And so this evening, come, be fed. Receive Jesus in these forms of bread and wine. Receive forgiveness and strengthening and renewal and faith. Receive love, the love that God has given us. And pray that God will send us into the world to love as Jesus has loved us. Amen.